I've got a very exciting guest with us today. I've been joined by the grandfather of the Parliament, a very wise man, and his name is Bob Katter. Bob, welcome to the show.
If there's a challenge out there and there's a fight and we are the big underdogs, well, bring it on, brother. And I warn you, I'm not noted for being nice to my enemies.
When that journalist very insensitively said,
Lebanese heritage yourself, what would
Oh, mate, don't say that.
have good values?
He said, you're Lebanese. He accused me of not being
Australian.
He is a wasp. In his mind, he doesn't see me as an Australian. When he made that remark, every Australian, there's a lot of people from Ireland that didn't get it easy in this country. A lot of people from Upper Scotland and Wales that didn't get it easy in this country either. Talking about every figure that came here, you know, and the sectarian nature of society in Queensland was just bloody appalling. There was nothing in between.
yes,
You're on one side,
yeah,
the other side.
I feel that we have abdicated the field. We aren't actually having those discussions at a local level. And as a result, these cultural communists come in with their long march of institutions.
I think that every birth in Australia, a mother gets $60,000. I want to state publicly that I will not swear allegiance to a foreign monarch.
If we don't get this right, then we are going to be at the mercies of other countries' capital cities, not our own. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 54 of the Ark podcast. Now, I've got a very exciting guest with us today. I've been joined by the grandfather of the Parliament, a very wise man, a man who I'd comfortably feel giving him the keys to the country, and his name is Bob Katter. Bob, welcome to the show.
Great honour to be on your show, Joel.
Not at all, Bob. Before we get into it, I was really moved a month ago. You hopped on a great friend's podcast. His name's Sam Bamford. He runs the Two Worlds Collide podcast, and I was astonished by the topics you covered on there and the clarity with which you spoke on it. You spoke about energy, farming, water, the Bradfield scheme, infrastructure, immigration and integration, made in Australia, how can we bring back industry? You spoke on defence, which is certainly something that's quite topical, income splitting with taxation, mining coal in the Galilee, and also ethanol. And I'm listening to this podcast, and I'm like, okay, that's how you save the country. And for those of you listening, I recommend you listen to that podcast. That's how you save the country. But Bob, what I'm really interested in is why is that not happening? Why has Parliament become in a way where they're just antithetical to those plans? Because they make sense.
Joel, they announced this week $1 billion, $1.2 billion for ethanol. Now, I just came from a meeting with Kirsty Bevan, who used to be my chief of staff.
Yep.
Her best friend is now my chief of staff. But she works for Dick Honan. Now, Dick can supply that ethanol.
Yep.
As I understand it, and I haven't confirmed this, most of their ethanol goes overseas for medicinal purposes. And yet, the Premier of New South Wales, Morris Iema, introduced 6% compulsory. Every country on earth has 5% ethanol in their petrol tanks, not because they love farmers or because they're trying to save the planet, but because unless you do that, millions of people will die every year from the superfine particles that come out of your exhaust. So every country's here. When Morris Iema did it in New South Wales, he said, I can't go another day without people's deaths on my conscience. People just don't have to die. So 6% ethanol. You probably only need 5% to do the job.
Yeah.
And maybe even less than that. But the point of the story is if you look at the imports for this country, the biggest import by far and away is fuel. It's $45 billion. So that means that of our export earnings, $500 billion, a tenth of that just boomerangs back out to buy fuel and lubricants and all the other things. Now, we are 32% self-sufficient in oil, and we are the country, one of the biggest grain exporters in the world, and one of the biggest sugar exporters in the world. Where do you get ethanol from? Grain and sugar. So who's set up to do it?
Yes.
We are. But there is a classic example of what you're talking about.
Yes.
They've announced now they're going to give $1.2 billion to do some, what is effectively research on aviation fuel. I can assure you that international airlines are not going to buy aviation fuel of some little outfit in Australia.
Yeah.
But that is a measure. That is a measure. Now,
but why?
If you go through the industries in 1992, right, and it's really funny because it's 1992 is the year that you're asking the questions about.
Yeah.
From then on, it changes completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, our exports in 1992 was over 6,000 million for wool, as it has been for our entire history, and 5,900 with coal. Right now, there's no reason why that shouldn't be the way it is today. But Keating came in and deregulated and wrecked the marketing arrangements, and now there are no sheep in Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say that, let me be very specific. There are 371 million sheep in Australia. Now there's less than 3 million. My electorate had 371,000, my little state electorate. Within 3 years, the last year of there, Harry, why you're it? Hey, Bobby, there'll be no sheep within 3 years. None at all. But there's no cattle come in to take their place. You would sort of think, well, the sheep have moved out, so the cattle will move in and take. No, the cattle numbers are down 20%. Now, that's in agriculture. If you look at manufacturing, you get up in the morning and you switch the lights on. That's the first thing you do when you get out of bed, I think most people. Well, the electricity comes from China. In Queensland, 52% of daylight power comes from that silly plastics they put on your roof, right? And I speak with authority because guess who put the first standalone solar system in Australian history way back in 1983, before most people in this program were born? I put it in. So I know all about it. And I ask people, oh, that's good that you put all that stuff on the roof. How do you get up there to clean it every fortnight? Yeah. Well, what do you mean clean it every fortnight? Well, how often do you put the windscreen wipers on in your car? Oh, twice a week. And they look at me and say, oh, right, I didn't know that. No, they didn't tell you that when they sold it to you. Yep. But when they sold me the original program in Australian history, they said, you will clean every fortnight or it doesn't work.
Every fortnight.
Or it doesn't work.
Well, I think, Bob, this is the problem. We know that we don't have fuel. We know that we don't have any industry. It's all being offshored. The wool industry is gone. Wheat is going down as well. We've got less than 20 days of diesel. We've got less than 20 days of unleaded. But the real question is why? You covered a lot of this with Sam, the problems, how we can fix it. But it's almost as, and this is, I'll be blunt with you, Bob. People are saying our country is not, it is serving the interests of everyone but Australians. Why?
I mean, a facile answer is in the Queensland cabinet, there was not a single person there with a university degree. There was a qualified lawyer at the table. There was a qualified school teacher. There was myself. I'm president of everything at Queensland University. It was the only university in Queensland then. But I never got a degree. It didn't interest me. And also, it would be a burden for me to carry. And I won't go into that. But now I'd say probably around the table, almost everyone would have a university degree. But the university tells you, and I'm not speaking as an outsider or a person carrying a chip on my shoulder. I was I did a interview with very left-wing ABC announcer. Well, it doesn't narrow it down, does it? Not sure. And I switched. Fortunately, it was AM program. I fortunately switched the radio on before I went on, and she was sending me up. She said, "Oh, we got the Mad Hatter Bob Catter on this morning. Oh, won't that be fun? The Mad Hatter." And so when I came on, I said, "Fran, did you go to Sandstone University?" And she said, "No, I didn't." Well, I did. "Fran, were you president of your faculty at the university?" "No, I wasn't." "Well, I was." "Were you president of your college at the university, Fran?" "No, I wasn't." "Well, I was." "Were you president of Combined Colleges Council at the university?" "No, I wasn't." "Well, I was." "Were you vice president of Students' Union for 3 years in a row at your university?" "No, I wasn't." "Well, I was." So if I'm a clown and an idiot and a half-wit, where does that leave you, Fran? There's a thundering silence, and I've never been on AM again.
Sure.
Which I'm not losing any sleep over.
Yeah.
But they think they're little smart asses, excuse my crude and vulgar language, but they're really numbskulls. They have no ability to think. They've got an ability to absorb knowledge and regurgitate it. And I use that word with a forethought, regurgitate. But they don't understand what they're talking about.
Right.
And, well, look no further than the decision on ethanol last week. 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, I said, if the new Liberal government keeps, as clearly they are going to keep, that punitive tax regime, which is twice the tax charged in New South Wales, and New South Wales is the highest tax coal in the world.
Yeah.
If they continue with it, the whole coal industry will collapse. And he's telling his backbenchers, don't worry about it. We don't have to keep the 2034 agreement because it's going to close down anyway.
Yeah.
We just keep. And also he's got 60,000 million he's got to find for his Olympic Games when his annual budget's only 60,000 million. So he needs the money. And he'll be gone by the time the industry starts really collapsing. Well, 2 weeks after I said that, 3 major mines in Queensland announced their closure. But to answer your question as to why it occurred, I mean, all I can tell you, Joel, is I ask myself that question every day of my life.
Yeah.
I was in a government led by a bloke called Bajocki Peterson, and when he was elected Premier of Queensland and Leo Hilcher was he appointed head of government, the pair of them, Australia was a coal importing country. And within 17 years, we were the biggest coal exporting state on earth, Queensland. And the state's economy rode on. Mining trebled under them. There's other mining, not coal mining, other mining. There's no coal mining at all.
Yeah.
And then, agriculture quadrupled in size. We were building dams everywhere, and opening up new areas. I mean, it is a dry land, but it's only a dry land for half of the year, and a quarter of the year, it's bloody underwater.
Yeah.
Particularly true of North Queensland and the Northern Territory, or the eastern side of the Northern Territory. Well, that's nearly half of Australia I'm talking about. It's very, very wet indeed. But it's a ravaging, rampaging flood, and there's nothing at all.
Yeah.
Well, there was a bloke a long time ago called Moses, and he made a big name for himself saying, you have 7 bad years and you have 7 good years, and let's store the grain.
Yeah.
He made a real big name for himself that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the general sentiment in the community is that the adults have left the room. Maybe it was 1992, maybe it was earlier. But I'm reminded of a quote, a Greek proverb, actually. It's that a society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they shall never sit. And it does feel that, you can use that, it's not my own. Now, there's a sentiment when listening to you on Sam Bamford and talking about these nation-building projects to make Australia resistant and really a superpower in our own right. That's really not what we're getting with our politicians. And you've been there for over 51 years, and you're being honoured with a painting. And there's a sense that both Liberal, Labor, and the Greens and the Nationals, they're just not serving the Australian people's interest. And you could imagine where a lot of people are coming from when they're saying, well, Bob, why do you think that is? Are these people bought off? Is it the corporations? Do we have spies in our government from China or India or wherever? This is what people are thinking, because it's just not happening.
The yes/no vote was an absolutely magnificent litmus test. All of Australia voted no, except Canberra. And Canberra voted very strongly yes, completely out of step with the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Completely out of step with the rest of the country. And I, as a person, on Dark, I come from Cloncurry, I've always touted myself as cockadoo, so they did keep the white fellas at bay for 25 years.
Yeah.
So I sort of feel I'm promoting myself.
Yeah, blackfella.
But you're loving hearing me say, well, we black fellas are sick and tired of this, we just had
it's a rort.
But
yeah.
But we don't want separatism, we don't want paternalism, and we don't want guiltism. But we do want, when we're supposed to own a third of Australia, I would like to say that someone has a freehold title there.
Yeah.
When I was a minister, I said, what do you want? You know what they did? 3,000 people in the community areas, these are the old mission stations. I want to make a point as I go past there. I'm a historian, but also my family went to Cloncurry in a Coventry coach in the 1880s.
Yeah.
When Cockadoo Wars were still being fought. It went on for about 20 years. Black fellas killing white fellas and white fellas killing black fellas. Because of the nature of that rocky, rugged country, guerrilla warfare was absolutely made for guerrilla warfare in those days, and they did it well. Forget about that. They would have been annihilated, and I can't speak with authority for the rest of Australia. I'm only familiar with North Queensland, but there's no doubt that they would have been annihilated. I don't want to go into who picked the fight, but all I can tell you is I know who was winning the fight in the end. And until the missionaries came along and they seized 3 million acres, all above 26-inch rainfall. That means really good. I'm a cattleman, really good country for cattle. 26-inch rainfall. And kept it for them, and they survived. But no one's ever acknowledged the contribution of Christianity to the survival of the first Australian people.
Yeah.
And I might say their forward movement, there were 2 missionaries that created a mission station in North Queensland called Hopevale. It was a Lutheran mission. And the 2 missionaries were a bloke called Leo Rosendale, Nolly Pearson's Lester Rosendale, son of, first cousin, so he's one of the Rosendales. And the other one was a bloke called Bajoggy Peterson, who later on became Premier of Queensland. They had 2 missionaries, spent their time on horseback, and pull these people in to protect them, because what was happening to them was real, real bad. And without the missionaries, my mob would have been slaughtered, and there's no question about that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into all the ugly details of that.
Yeah.
But
The Voice demonstrated that there's sort of black sovereign people out there, a lot of Aboriginals, where they voted no. They said, you are spending up to $40 billion on us. We're not seeing it. It's going to all these bureaucrats, these planners, these lawyers. It's not getting to the grassroots. and it's not actually yielding any results. I mean, 40 billion, it's almost as big as the defence budget of 50 billion.
When I did the figures, and in conjunction with the Parliamentary Library, but the average person who claimed to be first Australian should have been getting $200,000. And I remember Wilson Tuckey saying the only thing the place needs to do is to tie it up in a box with a chain on it so no one can get it open in Canberra and send it out to the people. And only they've got the key.
Yeah.
And that was a very good call. And Wilson, like myself, was brought up in schools where, probably half of school was first Australian.
Yeah.
And you probably had dust-ups and fights with a few of them. Anyway, you get the point. But let me come back. I can't answer your question. I wish I could, on why it all turned bad. And it turned bad so quickly.
Yeah. Is it a victims of our own success sort of thing? Like we became apathetic because of how good we had it?
No, there was a belief that in a group in Australian society which would have considered themselves working class in the 30s and 20s, working class doesn't work now in Australia. I represent people that wear steel cap boots and hard hats, but they're the aspirational class, and definitely not proud flag-waving members of any working class.
Cultural Marxists.
Yeah. No, I don't know what labels people want to put on, but all I know is, they work hard in dangerous jobs to better themselves, to better their families and their opportunities. But somehow, people were told that kids had to go to university, and that was a mark of success.
Yeah.
Well, it has been disastrous set of values for society, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that, a lot of people would like to go to university and would enjoy going to university. And there's no doubt that we need engineers and doctors, no doubt at all, and scientists too, not that there's any science being done in Australia. Right? But I don't like dwelling on how we got there because I don't know or understand that.
It could have been from the incentives, right? The incentives of X and all of that.
The greatest government that Australia's ever seen outside of the Theodore governments was the Jockey-Peterson government. And no matter how you want to measure that, if you want to measure that the number of people going to university, we come out in front,
Yeah.
If you want to measure that the number of medical schools,
Yeah.
we come out in front. But however you want to measure that, the number of people with a quarter acre of land, where they had very little money on it, and it didn't matter what measure. Average incomes, probably the highest in the world. Didn't matter what measure you use. But in that cabinet, there wasn't a single person that had a university degree. In fact, the only one that had been to university was myself.
Yeah.
And, my qualifications, working as an unskilled labourer in the lead smelter. In a society in which an unskilled labourer in the lead smelter within 17 years could own 250,000 acres in a 26-inch rainfall belt and not owe any money on it, and is negotiating $15 million for his mining interest because he's a mining man. He had cattle, but he was not a cattleman.
Yeah.
What a great society that was.
Yeah.
Those freedoms, those wonderful sense of excitement and achievement has been taken off Australians by a generation of leadership that has betrayed every single thing that Advance Australia Fair represents.
The north of Queensland, there's over 1 million people there, and they have an abundance of rainfall. And you've alluded to the whole Bradfield scheme. What can be done if you do canals in the actual middle of Australia and all the way from Adelaide Port there up to the Northern Territory, or the north of Queensland there.
It'll reach up to a point above Rockhampton. This is in central Australia, but if you go to the coast, you can get on a boat
Yeah.
at Adelaide and go up to a point.
Right.
Never get off water and go up to a point.
Right.
North of Rockhampton.
Yeah. Right. So in the centre of Australia, they would access the Galilee.
Yeah.
To mine coal there, or
that's different again.
Right.
But the Galilee Basin is inland from what's called Bowen Basin. We mine what is called the Bowen Basin, which is about within 150 kilometres of the coast. The Galilee is 320 kilometres from the coast. There is a mine there, but they're doing 5 million tonne. They want to do 25 million tonne.
Right.
And there are Gina Reinhardt's there, Clive Palmer's there. Everyone thinks there's someone that's got stakes in the Galilee.
Yeah.
But they have not got any permits. And in fact, the 5 major permit applications have all been cancelled. Yeah. So the Galilee is dead in the water. And as for water schemes, we haven't built a dam in Queensland, except for domestic consumption.
Yeah.
We haven't built a dam in Queensland in 32 years.
Right. Well, this is what Alan Jones used to talk about. Like, why aren't we doing the Bradfield scheme either? Because you'd green the centre of Australia. You could feed all of Asia with the food. You could talk about housing. I mean, housing wouldn't be a problem because if you can green the centre of Australia, we've got so much land for 27 million people. The real question is, how do you keep everyone from coming in? Because they'll be banging down the door of Australia to get in because of how well we'll be doing.
Well, let me address that, because the head of the Bank of Tokyo in Australia gave an address, should be about 45 years ago now, to the banks in Australia, the National Banking Conference. And he said that unless Australia goes to a population of 60 million, it is fairly irrelevant to the rest of the world. And I mean, no disrespect to this Prime Minister or other Prime Ministers. I mean, it is so silly. Who cares what Australia thinks or whether Australia's going to be on America's side?
Yeah.
I mean,
we're such an irrelevance.
What are our 15
Ob.
Navy ships?
Ob, this annoys me so much. Like, when we start getting onto defence, when we saw the breakout of the war with Ukraine and Russia, everyone stopped everything. For the first time, we weren't talking about COVID. We were talking about Russia, Ukraine. And everyone's like, Joel, what do you think? And I said, we're irrelevant. We are fundamentally, in the words of Jim Molan, we are a one-shot military. We're too small. We don't pack a punch. We don't have the equipment we need. We might have a handful of great aeroplanes, but that's it. We don't have a big enough force in any way. And it really makes me angry because it's... Tell me. Yeah.
Channel 7 did a wonderful piece on Australia's Defence Forces. And there's a $1 billion plane. We've got good aeroplanes taking off, right? And he had a drone. He sent the drone over to say g'day to the aeroplane. Then there's a naval ship.
Yeah.
He sent the drone over to say g'day to the naval ship.
Yeah.
Well, if the drone carried explosives, there'd be no $1 billion aeroplane.
$1 billion aeroplane
would have vanished. There's no, but it just showed the total ridiculous nature of there's no defence force at all.
If you don't laugh, you're going to cry, basically. Like, I just... So we got the fuel problem. We don't have any deminers for our ports. If our ports get mined, we'd be relying on either the Yanks or the Poms.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was listening to a great conversation between John Anderson, former Deputy Prime Minister, and the head of ASIO, what's his name? Bold guy. Anyways, he was saying Australia needs to get our crap together with defence. For example, we just sold off, this is what he said, we just sold off our last demining ship. So if the port of Newcastle or whatever got mined, we're stuffed. So not only do we not have diesel fuel,
biggest coal port in the world, Newcastle.
Right, I didn't know that.
You will destroy the coal industry in New South Wales immediately.
Bob, this is why people think we're an occupied country. Like, you just cannot reckon with the stupidity of the fact that we've only got like 2 weeks worth of diesel. If all of our ships get destroyed, we have no merchant fleet bringing fuel into Australia. It all goes through the that strait near Singapore. I forgot the name of the strait. but all of our oil comes through there. If they start getting picked off by the Chinese or whoever, the submarines, we have 2 weeks left. If news broke out today, there would be a rush on petrol from the military, from the Australian people, and I remarked to a friend of mine that was on this podcast, Warwick Stacey, he's the former One Nation senator for New South Wales who resigned. I remarked to him, well, we'd have to go back to drawing things by horse and cart because we wouldn't have the fuel for trucks and everything. And he said to me, Joel, we wouldn't even have the horses. We wouldn't even have the ability to do the horse and cart like we used to. I mean, I don't know why we're not seeing any of this in the news. My alarm bells are going off. We no longer have a book for how to prepare for war. Sorry for talking so much about this, Bob, but I really am passionate about our wartime readiness in this country. We really aren't ready at all.
Joel, I was laid up for 6 weeks at, minor operation of no consequence. But I just was laid up for 6 weeks. And, our thrust has been, with our little political party, was to take balance of power in North Queensland and break North Queensland away. Build a fortress in North Queensland, right, and sally forth from the fortress. I don't think time is on our side anymore. And also, I have brilliant communication stuff. I got 2 ladies, and one won the prize for advertising for Australia.
Yeah.
The other one did that pigs thing that Wilkie and Lottie. It's still reverberating. Oh, it was stupid.
Yeah.
Wilkie thought it was. But that day, Woolworths wet their pants and bought down 401 items in price.
Yeah.
Every single political party in the federal parliament announced that they've always been for, divestment, right? And we're moving legislation for divestment. None of them did, but all the same, I'm just saying we can shake them up. That weapon that gives me 1 million hits regularly on the internet, I think that has got to be weaponised to go into the selection. The Gumtrees have had enough.
Yep.
We're moving. And organisations like yourself are absolutely critical here. Don't underestimate. Now, if we run a person in every seat in Queensland, my profile at the present moment goes on every single out-of-vote card. We run 25 or 30 seats, federal seats. We've got to get people to do it. And they've got to put core flutes up and get out-of-vote cards handed out. And, we should get a senator out of that, which is not very big bet. We might even get lucky and win 1 or 2 federal seats in Parliament. But Di Lee, she refers to the awesome foursome, and I hadn't thought about it before, but yes, Di sees the world the same way as I do, where I'm talking about Bradfield and putting 20,000 farms into North Queensland.
Yeah.
She's talking about restoring the underwear industry, which employed 5,000 people in her electorate, and in Kevin Rudd's electorate, actually, was the other one in Brisbane.
Yeah.
When I heard that bonds were moving overseas, every man for himself, I bought 40 changes of underwear, as quick as I could.
Yeah.
Now let me just go back to the Gumtrees. What do they say? The Gumtrees say every boy, when he turns 14, is given a combat rifle and trained how to use it.
Yeah.
It then lives in the school armoury. Later on, when it leaves school, in the town armoury. So now, over a period of 10 or 15 years, you've got 7 million combat rifles distributed in 70,000 sites throughout Australia.
Yeah.
So if you come here and try to confiscate those weapons, forget about it.
Yes.
Not even China can do that one. That's the guerrilla army.
Can I just say, Bob, to bring people back to a time when we actually did that? My audience know this, but I went to the King's School in North Parramatta. Every boy that went through that school from years 8 to year 12 knows how to shoot. Now, that is something that is gone. That school was founded in 1886, I think it was, 1885. And we had to do cadet corps. That's where these swords come from. These swords are from the cadet unit. So King's School has the largest cadet unit in Australia. I think it's something like six to 800 cadets. And so
for our listening audience, if he had a sword, he was a commander of the cadets.
I wasn't the top. I was the cadet under officer, so I was in charge of a platoon of about 30 boys. I had a sergeant. I had 3 corporals, a lance corporal, a signaller.
I was also an under officer.
Oh, okay. There you go. And we all at some point, and there was probably about 20 to 30 platoons, and Singleton Army Rangers, where once a year we'd all go for a week. We'd be given nothing but a map and a compass, no GPS, and you got no teachers, and you go up and down, through leeches, through valleys, and just work it out with some ration packs. And it was the best thing that I thought a young man needs growing up. And we learnt how to shoot as well. And so I'm an excellent shot now. And what I didn't know, and again, people listening to this, Bob, they're probably thinking that's a little bit radical, maybe what if you cut yourself and whatever. That's not even radical. When I was at school, our deputy headmaster also went to King's about 40, 50 years ago. And he told us what you're saying. We used to take the guns with us home.
That's correct.
From the school.
That's correct.
They used to march. So when we do our, it's called the Passing Out Parade, once a year. It's in about June at King's. It's amazing. We don't march with guns. They used to march with the guns over their shoulders.
Wow. Now they send you home to play Call of Duty.
The day boys at my boarding school where I went, they had to take them home to clean and oil them, ready for the next day when we were doing training. But
yes,
when I'm on their bicycles, it's a 303.
Yeah.
It's really heavy caliber, serious killing machine.
That'd throw you off. Yeah.
But when I said every kid should have a rifle, I had a bit of a slack period for publicity. I would sort of stir them up, attacking me from coming down. But no one did. Everyone was agreeing with me.
Yeah.
As a way of promoting, it was a damn squib. Everyone. But I was quite amazed, really.
Yes.
And I think there are a lot of people now getting scared,
Yeah.
Even the wokey, brigade, even they get getting a bit toey about things. But I was amazed that everyone left me alone. But let me just put to you, if you, and, I have some rage in my soul, but, if I had the ability, the head of the armed forces, I would have him committed to jail for 7 years, probably his wife too, right? But I'm not going to say who it is. Right?
Sure.
But let's just say things that he did resulted in the purchase of 15 patrol boats at a cost of $40,000 million. Each patrol boat has a machine gun. Now, you and I both know that in a platoon, there are 23 machine guns. You and I both were platoon commanders, and in a platoon, there are 23 machine guns. I had an Owen gun. The 4th Scout and 2nd Scout had an Owen gun. And there was general purpose machine gun and another 2 Owen guns in the platoon. So, just in my little platoon, there were like 17 machine guns. Well, we paid $40,000 million to buy 15 machine guns or 14 machine guns. The bloke should be put in jail if he was responsible for the decision.
Well, Bob, there's something to be said about that, because I don't know if it's because maybe we both had a bit of a taste of cadets in the military. And again, I didn't do that much. It was very basic training compared to the what the actual Sam Bamfords and the military guys do in Afghanistan and whatever. But it makes me so angry, because I think maybe as a bloke, maybe as someone that understands force and power and asserting, if we don't get this right, then we are going to be at the mercies of other countries' capital cities, not our own. And when I hear stories about the submarines not being able to submerge, or the tanks that we just ordered not being able to drive through water. We had a guest tell us about these tanks that are parked near Canberra. They're not even able to drive through water. They just stop working. They turn off. And when we hear about what's going on with the fact that I think the Taliban has more Apache helicopters in Australia or something crazy like that, or even the fact that our Navy, the new submarines we're going to get.
No, we're going to get them, by the way, for 23 years now.
Yeah.
Around about every 3 years we announce the submarine contract, but no submarines.
Yeah, and what's crazy to me is before World War One, we had the opportunity to actually put an order in for military, a second-tier Navy. So the Parliament, both bipartisanly, they agreed on the terms. Within a few years, 5 years, they had a Tier 2 Navy arrive in Australia a year before the breakout of World War One. That's my understanding. These submarines aren't going to arrive here from the time that that we put the order in and then they arrive. It's like 25 years. And what's crazy, that is the duration from the start of World War One to the end of World War Two.
Wow.
Just so people understand how chaos. Like Bob, I am incensed by this. I am incensed.
Yeah, now let me paint a picture for you, right? The gum trees take over Australia, right? So I'm one of the decision makers, right? We immediately make a decision to build 7 patrol boats a year, right? So within 10 years, we've got 70 patrol boats. Those patrol boats have missile capacity and interception capacity. You don't need a big frigate or destroyer or anything to carry missiles. But 80 patrol boats. Now, they're concentrated in the northern half of Australia. That means that 40 of them can be put together immediately, hurling missiles, every few minutes. Not for a long time, because you can't carry a lot of missiles, but for a fair while. So that is your fortress wall. And ever since man has been man, he has built a protective barrier. Whether it was thorn bushes put in a heap, or whether it was a fire at the mouth of the cave, or whether it was the walls of Constantinople, the giant fortress walls of the Knights of St. John on Malta.
Yes. Yes.
He's built a fortress wall. Now, fortress wall today is a wall of missiles. So there's your fortress wall of missiles. Now, any invading force will make it through that missiles. Then you have an army 3 times current size. And as the Ukraine, it's been very interesting. I spoke to one of the senior new appointees in the army, and I was very pleased to say, so what's the lessons of the Ukraine? He said artillery. And I said, very pleased to hear you say that, because I would have been critical if you didn't say that. We all thought it'd be missiles. Well, it's not. Missiles are apparently too expensive. So they're hurling 10,000 artillery shells at each other every day. Every day, 10,000. We wouldn't have 1,000 artillery shells.
We can't make anything.
Australia.
Can't make it.
And so we have, and I quite literally believe it needs to be 400, maybe 800 artillery pieces, and 10,000 rounds, with each artillery piece. But then factories, and you don't need one factory, you need about 3 or 4 factories to turn those pieces out. And a bit of comic humour. There are people in the army that agree with that point of view, so they called expressions of interest, and a certain firm won the tender. So they gave this firm $40 million to build a factory for the ammunition for the artillery. And then they gave the bloke no orders. Be some incredible stupidity. They give the contract to a French company in Victoria. Well, there's nothing against it going to Victoria, but so he's left with $50 million. So which the government's put 20 million in, and he's got no orders. And that's like the decision on the patrol boats. What in hell's name did you spend every single cent we have to improve our armed forces, and you spend it on some patrol boats, go and have a look at them, and possibly go fishing for a weekend, because that's all they're any good for. Now, I just want to come back to, you get 80 or 100 patrol boats with missile capacity, interception capacity. I wouldn't be real keen trying to get through that, even if I was bloody China or, God help us, America. But you will get through it. When they arrive, wherever they're going to arrive, you've got to have the ability to be able to move those artillery pieces anywhere in Northern Australia pretty quickly. And that can be done. I won't bore you with how or what, right? And then finally, there's 7 million combat rifles and 60,000 arsenals all over Australia. So then you've got a guerrilla army. And Vietnam, the greatest military machine the world had ever seen, had piss and pick handles belted out of them and retreated with their tail between the legs. The second biggest military force on earth went into Afghanistan, went out with their tails between their legs. You know, and the whole might of the Russian Empire collapsed. You know, communism collapsed.
That's right.
As a result of it. But, you know, hey, what about Napoleon? He never conquered Spain. Because he just couldn't overcome the guerrilla fighters. The Germans in Russia, you know, about half that fighting was done by guerrillas. So it doesn't matter where you look. And it breeds, I mean, I don't know about other people, and I think you probably had the same experience. When I was given a 303 as a little skinny kid, 12 years of age, and I was a year out of myself at school, and I thought, I just felt 10 feet tall, you know. My country had given me this big combat rifle, and I was, you know, challenged by, but you will defend your country. And, you know, all my uncles and great uncles and my father's cousins, they were all in the war, you know. And I just felt so proud that, you know, my country had trusted me with this big rifle. Well, I'd like every other boy to get that same experience that I had. And in all of history, there are initiation ceremonies. Maybe they're on the playing fields of rugby, as the British used to say. But they have their initiation ceremonies. And we don't have that, and maybe that's why we're lacking manhood in this country. So I'm talking about defending the nation. The most important thing is population. We simply cannot achieve anything. I mean, if you want a sophisticated economy, you have to have a home market. And I will add a protected home market to get it going. Jack McEwen told me when I was only a young person, there is no such thing as a tariff. There are only nursery tariffs. Well, Jack might have carried that a bit far, but anyway, but his concept is correct. But to get an industry away, you've got need a protected home market. But our home market is so small that it's irrelevant. The reason we're producing no petrol was our refineries were tiny. We had 5 refineries, but economies of scale, like, you know, they have 200,000 megalitre refineries. You know, ours were 10,000 megalitres. No efficiencies of scale. But let me come back to addressing the issue of population. Now, my staff, who really run my show more than I do, I said, you're not going to like this, and I'll agree with it, but I think that every birth in Australia, the mother gets $60,000. And my wife said the wrong people will be having babies. No, those people are having babies now because they get sort of like, it's effectively $5,000. Those sort of people, $5,000 is big. But if you want to have the other people, you know, you better start paying $60,000. The French did this and it didn't work all that well. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned in North Queensland, I can't do everything for Australia, but I can get out a medallion for every mother that has 3 kids. I can't take them out to dinner like Donald Trump's going to do anyway. It's 5 kids. But he's on the right track. The other thing, China looks real good. Let's just come back to the fact that within 15 or 20 years, half its population will be over 70, and then it doesn't look so good at all. And they are well aware of that problem. And like all the other countries, they're not kicking back into having kids. But if you treat motherhood as a subject for girls in school, I mean, you tell them that they should become vets or veterinarians or doctors or lawyers, or you don't tell them they should become mothers, which is the most important. Well, we belong to a vanishing race, and there can't be a more definitive judgment upon a race of people. And I love debates with the abortion mob, because I always conclude by saying, well, the only positive aspect to it is that your mob are vanishing, my mob are proliferating.
That's one way to put it.
And they hate it.
Yeah.
You can see them burr right up.
Yeah. But but Bob, you know what makes it so evil is then they're like, we don't have kids, but we have your kids at the schools, and we educate your kids with ideology.
In the state campaign, I was working on polling booths, and every single Liberal that was handing out vote cards against us, Robbie Katter stepped on a landmine during the election, and abortion sort of came forth. They said, are they pro-abortion? And I got a very good voice, and I'm very aggressive, of course. Oh, look at this big tough guy. He wants to murder little kids before they're born. Poor, helpless little babies. He wants to murder them. And the bloke's eyes have widened, and he's thinking, what am I going to do? He wants me to hit him. Well, of course, I didn't want him to hit me.
Yeah.
They're not going to be game to hit me, that bunch of cowards.
That's right.
And spit upon that. Anyway, but population is desperately needed. But we can move. I'm confident we can move to 1 million.
I think so.
1 million a year.
Yeah.
I
think.
And migration, 82% of Australians want it stopped. Right now, I mean, I have had wonderful experiences with people from the Punjab, Sikhs. Their religion is almost identical. Christianity. I think Filipinos are wonderful people. I don't know. Maybe I've been lucky, but I haven't met a bad one. But there is no doubt that there is a madness abroad when you are bringing people in from countries where they laud the people that went to America and murdered 3,000 people in the Twin Towers. Yeah. They laud people that crossed the border and murdered 1,200 people in the neighbouring country. Those people are coming to Australia at the rate of 100,000 a year. And if you think they're going to change and become Australians, you believe in the tooth fairy.
Yeah.
Now, I make a point here, and it's a very important point to make. I'm not attacking that religion because we in North Queensland have an awful lot to do with Indonesia through the cattle industry. Live cattle is huge. And the leather trade, they've become the big boys in the Indonesians in the world. And but there's a great mutual, but I have a lot to do. And I was with the ambassador last week before last, and he's a Christian, and the deputy ambassador are Christians. But but the religion that they have in their country is a lot different than what they have in the Middle East and Africa. Yeah. And I mean, if you think it's good that maybe 100 Christians are being murdered every week in Nigeria, then bring them to Australia. Right? I don't think any sane person on the planet would think that'd be a good idea. But that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. And so long as they call themselves refugees, you can get into this country.
That's right. Especially when they,
well, I like Tony Burke personally, but I wouldn't like to be around when he has to go to meet his maker.
Yeah, me neither. Well, can I just say, Bob, because you brought up the message of integration, there was a great quote by Pauline Hanson where she was asked, it was some Russian family they'd integrated into Australia, and they gave her this great quote, and she said, you know where your heart lies because it is where you are prepared to die. I think that when I think about my own grandfather and my own father, and maybe even your great-grandfather that came 140 years ago, they did become Australians because they were prepared to die for this country. Now, can I ask?
I just can't help but comment.
Yeah.
Grandfather, that in the Second World War, everyone was going off to war because they were too old to go to war, all the old grandfathers in Cloncurry.
Yeah.
So what they decided was they will defend the Cloncurry airport. So they had 24 hours, they sit there with their shotgun. And in the Cloncurry airport. Japanese are not going to get in
Yeah.
Cloncurry airport.
No, not at all. Not at all. It'll take more than that.
Dad's army sitting out there with
Yeah.
shotguns.
Oh, God.
I can't think about this roaring.
Yeah.
It was,
But-
screamingly funny.
Bob, if you don't mind me asking, so my just so you know my background, my grandfather, he came here in the late 60s under the White Australia policy. He was Lebanese and he was a Christian that came out. And the same with my mum's side, they came out. And so we've been here since the late 60s. Your family, at least maybe the Middle Eastern element, came up 140 years ago. Long time. You're Australians, 100%. Now, when I...
No. Look, if, I have a lot to do with the Sikhs, but they come into Australia, like yesterday.
Yeah.
And an Australian.
Yeah.
Pretty,
Yeah.
They're just as good an Australian as any of my family,
Sure.
And,
Look,
on the other side, the Henley side was probably the more predominant side,
Sure.
really. But they also nearly died in the Western Desert chasing
that's
gold.
right. Yeah. But what I was going to ask, Bob, is I think it was a couple months ago or a month ago when that journalist very insensitively said, well, you've got this history and whatever.
No. He said, you're Lebanese. Right?
Yeah.
He accused me of not being
Australian. Now, can I ask
being an Australian.
Yeah.
And let me just say this.
Sure.
He is a wasp. In his mind, he is a wasp.
Mm.
He doesn't see me
Mm.
as an Australian, right? White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? Tattooed in his brain. He's not
Yeah.
even conscious of it.
Yeah.
When he made that remark, every Australian, hey, there's a lot of people from Ireland, right, that didn't get it easy in this country. A lot of people from Upper Scotland and Wales that didn't get it easy in this country either, right?
Yeah.
So we're not just talking about people,
Mm.
unusual countries, we're
Mm.
talking about every bigot that came here, and
Yeah.
the sectarian nature of society in Queensland was just bloody appalling.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing in between.
Yes.
So you're on one side or
Yep.
the other side.
That's exactly what I thought happened. See, when I watched that, I saw my own father and on my mum's side and my dad's side who fought tooth and nail to carve out their space and to become Australians. They really fought. I had it easy. I didn't have to fight at train stations because I was a wok. My parents had to do that. They were the ones that got in the fights. So when I saw you blew up at that journalist, I was like, I understood exactly what was going on, because how dare you? We have fought to be Australians here. We are here to die for this country. How dare you call me some loyalty to some foreign country? I'm an Australian. I belong to this country. I thought, was that basically what?
But I truly believe every single person that has that said to them, and, I identify as first Australian too, if you're thinking I'm a black fella, not like you, right? Well, I take you out the back of the pub and bash you.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw his wonderful painting, and it's an iconic painting of Australia. A Matter of Honour, and they're out the back of the pub. Matter of Honour.
Yeah.
And a Matter of Honour. But my uncles, particularly one of them, he could read your mind, and if he thought you were thinking that he wasn't an Australian, he would bash you. And he was very good at bashing people, actually.
Yeah.
Extremely good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I call upon every person that if anyone thinks that you're different, then you stand up. You're an Australian, and you don't let them think that. They must be punished. And I far from apologising for that.
Yeah.
But our pro versus anti, like, I don't know, 500,000 hits, whatever it was, they're all on my side.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
No, look, I'm glad we cleared that up, because I was on the same page, but just these journalists, they're not journalists. They're activists.
Yep.
And they just try to do this. I like how you said it. They just sort of like wasps. and they want to misinterpret what you're saying. When a lot of Middle Easterners in Sydney, a lot of people that had Italian or Irish or whatever background, they're like, hang on, it wasn't easy to integrate. We had to punch on. My dad, he told me stories about having to be at school and actually having to literally punch on with guys to earn respect, actually earn the respect. And then now you're going to tell me, you journalist, that I'm not actually Australian because of this. It's like, how dare you? And so when you said that to him, I was like, yep. And most Aussies, I think they thought that. They thought, yeah.
Very much. I mean, the Sikh sleeps in mine because, I've got a lot of Sikhs in the banana industries.
Yeah.
That last president of Banana Growers Australia, Sikh. And I have a lot to them, some really close mates that back me strongly politically as well. But they see the world the same way. Can I just come back to population? If we're about 400,000 a year babies now, we should be able to lift that to 1 million without a lot of effort. $60,000 a birth. Well, we're talking about $60,000 million. That's a lot of money for any government. But I think that's money well spent. So you can lift it to 1 million, right? So in 20 years, let's say we've got 30 million now, that's 50 million there. All right. You can afford to bring 250,000 migrants. I'm not keen on, migration. And remember, we're only 30 million people. You don't even bring in 300,000 a year in, you'll be swamped. Well, you can bring maybe 300. But I'd say, if I was setting it, I'd say 250,000. Yeah. And I would not bring anyone in. They come from a country with democracy, rule of law, Christianity or similar religion, industrial awards, egalitarian traditions. No. Yeah. Most of the migrants, it's no, right? And you say, where are you going to bring them in from? Oh, well, let's start with one of our neighbours, the Philippines, straight off. There you go, and they're people that like to come here and they speak English.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be a quite.
Well, Bob, I tell you what, I don't know how they get it wrong, our Department of Immigration, because on the one hand, we've got white South Africans trying to get into Australia. They can't get into Australia. They can't get into New Zealand on a visa. And they've got skills and whatever. Yet, like the black North African Muslim, it's like, yeah, no worries. We'll throw you in a house. We'll do. This is what people are seeing. And, in Melbourne, we've had this wave of crime. In Queensland, we're getting this wave of crime happening. And it's like, are you going to set that right, government? Are you going to deport these people? Are you going to throw them in prison? Nah, give them bail. Let them out. A lot of Aussies are like, who are you serving? I mean, why are you letting these violent people into our country?
I could have it wrong. And, Albo and I have always went in together, and I've always got on well with Albo. And mind you, when the CFMEU rolled him about crewing of the shipping, he I don't know what I should say this on that, but he used the F word to me 13 times on the telephone.
Is that right?
We really rubbed his nose.
Right.
I've got to say.
Right.
We wanted Australian crewing, the Australian shipping. And anyway, let's say you bring in 300,000 a year and you've got 1 million births a year. I think that's easily achievable. Well, within 25 years, you're up around 60 million people.
Yeah.
And that's beginning to become a real nation. I'm looking at Europe, those countries. It's funny, they're all about 80 or 90 million people. I mean, Germany goes up to 120 million. So, I think that's getting respectable. And then, we're an asset to the United States then. I mean, the United States, they need a roadmap to find out where we are. It's silly.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was silly to recognise Gaza.
You don't think it was silly for Australia to recognise Gaza, you mean?
I think that was very serious. Right. Very serious. Yeah. And you identified yourself as a crazy nation,
Right.
way out of step with respectable governments in the world. I mean, you either believe in democracy or you don't. You either believe in rule of law or you don't. But when these people murder 3 million people in the Twin Towers and then laud that behaviour, and then they cross the border and murder 1,200 people and they laud that behaviour. But I think the time I was most proud of our little political party was two of our blokes were pushing through pro-Gaza demonstrators at Queensland Parliament, and one of them, he couldn't resist temptation, started tearing their socks down. They got into punch up and the coppers dragged them both away.
Yeah.
I don't know where in my upbringing I was programmed to be an anti-bully, but I fought the bully in every school I was in,
Yeah.
and later on in life, the same. I heard a bloke telling a story about how he bashed three blokes in the Julia Creek pub. Well, the fact is, it was only one bloke, but I wasn't sitting on him playing ping pong with his head on the floor of the pub, and I wasn't going to house or wise.
Yeah.
But the underdog, those poor people, 6 million of them murdered by that crazy in Germany. These poor people, and the ship of shame, like 6,000 people or something were in the ship that escaped from Germany, and no one would take them. They went to England and they wouldn't take them. They went to America, they wouldn't take them. They went to Brazil, they wouldn't take them. They came to Australia, we wouldn't take them. And they just kept sailing around the world.
Right.
Because no one would take them.
Why was that? Why did they?
Just anti-Semitism. I mean, even some good prime ministers in Australia were very anti-Semitic, and it doesn't reflect well upon them. But you start picking on the Jew, I just feel I got to stand up, start giving you a bloody flogging, these poor people. And here it is in my country at the present moment. I saw a bunch of them, I don't know, 40 or 50 of them, with the Opera House, so they're identifiable, Australian landscape, screaming, "Gas the Jews." And the police took a bloke that yelled out against them. They took him and put him in a paddy wagon. Not the mob that were advocating murder. Those two nurses blithely saying, "Oh, yeah, if I was treating a Jewish patient, I'd kill him." Is there no punishment here for that?
Yeah.
And but
We've lost the thread. We've definitely lost the thread.
Cowardice.
Yeah.
When that bloke went to Munich to meet with Hitler, he was a yellow, gutted coward. He was scared, right? If Churchill had been there, there would have been no Second World War. The fact is that we're run by a bunch of cowards, and that applies to the Liberal Party just as much to the Labor Party.
Well, Bob, this is why it's so important that I think we get the word out on what you've got to say, because we are entering the period of weak men have created hard times. And the problem we have now is a lot of these solutions that you talk about, like in Sam Bamford's podcast, is that, they're going extinct, these solutions. People haven't even conceived of the fact that we can even do a canal in the center of Australia and benefit from all that wealth that could be generated. What I love about your plans is you're like, all right, we could give $60,000 to each mother for every kid that they have. And then you actually say, and this is how we're going to pay for it. There should actually be costs with regards to and payments with regards to all these minerals that we're selling.
This is just, it's so simple to do. You simply say that the superannuation companies will put 0.01% into building the refineries of competitive nature worldwide, here in Australia, and you will put, your Bowsers will contain 10% ethanol, ramping up to the same as in Brazil, 49%. Now that will make us almost totally. So I just gave a gift to my country of $45 billion a year. Well, the whole tax revenue of the bloody country at the present moment
Yeah.
is about 500 billion.
Yeah.
Well, I just, you'll get a tax return of 10%.
That's the military budget. That's the military budget right there. 50 billion.
Well, let me say there's 45 billion
Yeah.
in fuel. There's 32 billion a year in Bradfield with adjuncts, and I won't go into detail. There is 20 billion a year in the Galilee coalfields. Just open them up. And a giant power station needs to go in there. And the modern power station, I'm no greenie, I'm the anti-green. I'm the leader of the anti-greens. But, I think it's good to have, an attitude here. And algae ponds, in theory, should earn more money than the power station. And it's very good, the economics of energy, which I read recently, and, quite a notable book in the international scene. But he says if only we had a source of CO2, we'd be able to solve the problem of fuel because of algae. Well, we've got no source of CO2. Well, I thought it was a pretty stupid comment because we get every power station, coal-fired power station. But China's got 200 they're in the business of building 2,000 megawatt power stations. We've only got one 2,000 megawatt power station in Australia, Araring, just outside of Sydney. But they're going coal. In the meantime, they're selling to moronic countries solar panels. But I'm a mining man. You've got to know about chemistry and cost of smelting. Guess what they smelt glass with? Coal. Guess what that panel on the roof is? Glass. Do you just realise how incredibly stupid?
Well, this is this is why, Bob, people are saying that we are owned by corporations and our politicians are being bought off so cheaply, being put on these boards after they leave the parliament so cheaply to go on these corporation boards. The corporations that aren't actually paying their royalties to Australia, the country that they're benefiting from, the profits are all going overseas. This is something a lot of left-wingers like Punters Politics, Conrad, he's talking about. This is what I'm saying as well on the right. How do you solve this? I know you're a political man. You're saying we're going to run in the next Queensland state election and federally as well, and going to run in every seat.
Well, there are organisations like yourself and Not Problems in Cresco. There's a number of very good organisations like your own. And if they are mobilised, and we're very different from Pauline Hanson's party. We're very strong Christians in our party. And I don't want to denigrate Pauline in any way by saying that. But we are different, and that manifests itself like our preoccupation with, families and children and all that sort of thing. But survival of the race, and we're not surviving. But I got 12 acres on the Cloncurry River. I put a fence on it, and I went bush to a little town where the school had closed down and rolled up the fence and brought it back and put it up. And I chopped down 4 trees and 6 trees and put a shed, just shade cover. And I had to get a bloke in to drill 4 of us right on the river, side of the river, so it didn't cost much. And that's all I needed. It's 12 acres. Now, we can give every cattleman 200 hectares of freehold irrigation farmland, separate from pastoral lease. So there you go. I just created 1,000 farms. I just created 1,000 farms. The Hughenden Dam scheme will create 125 farms that can be replicated 16 times in North Queensland. We have massive water supply. So, just diverting a little tiny bit. If the whole of Bradfield scheme and the adjunct schemes as well that I've just outlined there, you won't use 2% of the rainfall runoff. All governments and all political parties have voted that it's all right to take 28% in the Murray-Darling. Now, you don't actually, it's not a zero-sum game. Most of that water goes down into aquifers and then filters out back into the river.
Yeah.
The water is used 8 times by the time it reaches the mouth of the Murray-Darling system. And people say it's contaminated. Well, I was there with a stack of fishermen fishing on the side of the river at the mouth of the Murray-Darling River. And I said, "Any diminution in fishing?" No, my granddad used to come down here fishing, and I catch more fish than he ever caught, So, anyway, you got the picture. But I'm very confident in my own mind where this country needs to be going. And because of the internet, people can tune in to where the country should be going. And they say, that's right. That's what I want, actually. Yeah. Now, your Liberal Party, and I'm going to put the boot right in here, is led by a person that wanted to stop the live cattle exports.
Right.
Now, the person that did that previously was Julia Gillard. 2 weeks later, she was removed as Prime Minister over that issue, right? And the market was reopened, but the price of cattle dropped clean in half. I mean, hey, we're fooling around here with the 6th biggest industry in Australia where you completely wrecked the wool industry.
Yeah.
Now you're going to completely wreck the cattle industry, which, by the way, is a secondary industry, because most of the employment is in beef processing, and leather and all those sort of things. 1,000. Anyway.
Yeah. She won't last, though. Susan Ley won't last, I think.
Well, there's another bloke down. He looks all right, but I just wonder,
Yeah, they all look all right.
I don't want to say anything.
Sure.
But the leader of the National Party on national television, when he was confronted with the live animals, he burst out crying.
Yeah.
Now, could you imagine a Jack McEwen or a Doug Anthony bursting out crying? They made other people cry, but they didn't cry.
Yeah.
But if you look at the destruction of agriculture in Australia, it was not by the Labor Party. It was not by the Liberals.
Yeah.
It was by the National Party. And John Howard understood that, and he was just so sad. And it was a separate party. He needed them in the coalition. But eventually he just couldn't take it any longer.
Well,
and he sacked the National Party leader from the portfolio of agriculture because he had the ignominy of now going down the history books as being the Prime Minister that presided over the greatest collapse in agriculture of any administration in Australian history.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his fault, it was the junior partner. And I was in that party when all that damage was done. Just in the sugar industry, there were 26 sugar mills in Australia. New South Wales, under the great leadership of my very good friend, was such a tragedy that he didn't take federal leadership.
Yeah.
The member for the Northern Rivers District. So the New South Wales industry is different, but the massive Queensland sugar industry, sugar is grown on the outskirts of Brisbane.
Yeah.
On the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
There's still a sugar mill on the Gold Coast, all the way up the coast, except for the Rockhampton area. It's sugar going all the way. It's a massive industry, but all of the industry was owned by the farmers. There are 26 sugar mills. They're all owned by farmers. There was another 3 owned by a company in Brisbane Company. One, a particular person leading the National Party deregulated the industry. 3 mills closed, and the other 23 are all owned by foreign corporations. Worse still, it's a monopoly. You can't put the cane in the back of the truck and drive them down to the next sugar mill. It goes bad very quickly, cane. Once it goes, it goes bad very quickly. The mills have got a monopoly. So
Right.
now foreign corporations have a monopoly over every farmer, and they're going down like 9 pins. And more of the industry now is owned by the foreign corporations. The farms are owned by the foreign corporations.
Yeah.
So we're back to where we were pre-Red Ted Theodore. We're back where we were. So we got to fight the fight again to get it back off them. And as for meat, if we get the balance of power, there'll be 2 sugar mills built immediately, and they will be owned by the farmers through legislation, lock-in legislation. Very difficult to unlock it. Constitutional, all that sort of thing. I won't go into the details of that. But so we will slowly start to rebuild the industry owned by Australians.
Can I ask, Bob, you've mentioned the Bradfield scheme, and I think in the past the Project Iron Boomerang as well.
Yeah.
Iron ore, steel in the north of Australia from WA.
Coal going one way and iron ore going the other.
Yeah, rather than, because what we do, for those who don't know right now, what we do right now is we send all of these materials overseas, and then they send it back as steel, when we could be doing it here with our own train lines.
Or sending the coal overseas and it comes back as glass on your roof.
Exactly. And which is madness. We should be doing this stuff here and then exporting it to them and then making money on that and then getting taxes on that. But I was going to ask, when it comes to these massive nation-building projects, whether it's the Bradfield scheme or Project Iron Boomerang or building canals, for God's sake, what's the relationship like between the state government and the federal government? Does the state government need the federal government to do this, or?
State government can do it, or the federal government can do it. But see, 12% of all of our incomes go into superannuation. Now, Kevin Rudd, in his second book, said this has to be addressed. There is no money going for national development now at all. But when I spoke to him, I said, are you going back to the 60-40 rule? Couldn't give 60% of our superannuation to governments today. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because in 1992, 60% of all superannuation went into government securities. So, but I mean, it's axiomatic when 2 experienced politicians talking, sort of in this sense, good blokes.
Sure.
I actually believe I'm a good bloke, but superannuation money has been spent 51% is spent selling shares backwards and forwards to each other. It's just a giant Ponzi scheme. And, people knock the unions, but Davey Noonan, who was the head of Federal Secretary of the CFMEU, he came in to see me and he said, hey, Bobby, he's on Seabusport. Shouldn't we put some of this money into development sort of things,
Yeah.
All we're doing is selling real estate and, shares backwards and forwards to each other, aren't we? And he was asking me,
wow.
but there's no problem with money. I was just like 0.5% of my superannuation, your superannuation, goes, there's miles of money to build a Bradfield scheme, and there's the bridging scheme. Ernie Bridge proposed the same scheme for Western Australia. And there you go. So Northern Australia now becomes one of the great food bowls of the world.
This is why people are screaming, why? Why isn't it happening?
The story of California, when a group of them said, we want to become part of the United States, right? There was only 100,000 people living in California. And the United States government said, I suppose we could take them, It's only desert anyway, but if they wanted to join us. Anyway, they got a government and said they were joined, whether they had been or not. There's 100,000 people. Now, it is the biggest agricultural producing state in the world. It's a bloody desert, And there's 27 million people.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles, the population is bigger than Australia, just in the city, one city. That they achieved so much, and we are actually regressing, is very sad. And there has to be reasons why they elected Trump. And, we elect.
Well, that's the policy of making our countries great again, make Australia great again. But I love your philosophy. I think I've heard you mention this in the past, this acronym, Borchoff.
Borchoff.
So build it, own it.
Gorbachev without the gore.
Gorbachev. And by the way, that stands for like build it, own it, reward. So give the reward to the Aussie people for
do
it.
the work.
Christianity.
Not the people here in Sydney that
Sure.
buy and sell shares to it.
Yeah, that's it. Christianity as well. So
Absolutely.
bringing it back to our values. Love that part. Our beautiful nature and wonderful land.
Yeah, enjoy it. I don't say protect it. I say enjoy it. And then I say protect it too. Yeah. But I say enjoy it, experience it. But yeah, right.
And then the two F's, fun and freedom, like a libertarian angle, like keep the government out of your life, sort of thing. Keep the government small and
absolutely
right. I like it.
When we had no regulations for subdivisions in Charters Towers, you could buy a block of land for $7,000. When we went to the Local Government Act, it went to $172,000. From $7,000, which was the real value, to $172,000.
Yeah.
When that restrictive regime was imposed. Or it's come back to about 120 or 140,000 for a block of land. But young people could get a block of land. I've got my grandson up there working with me at the present moment.
Yeah.
But, I think you'll probably get married soon. But, wouldn't it be lovely if he could get a block of land for $7,000 and pretty capable bloke, he built his own house on it,
Yeah.
And again, you try building your own house these days. Of course, I come from a town where the biggest robbery in Australian history, and every family in the town was involved in the robbery. One of my 12 best mates, I was trying to get out of him how many cattle he thieved.
Yeah.
And he's 83, so he came clean. They did one big hit on this big property up, and he got 6,000 head of cattle. I mean, it's like stealing $20 million from them.
Yeah. It's frustrating, yeah.
But if we'd played by the rules, there would have been no Cloncurry. So we didn't play by the rules, right? And so we didn't have a depression in Cloncurry because we freed up all the banks' money.
Right.
Would have been a good idea if every other town
Yeah.
robbed the banks during the Great Depression.
Yeah. Yeah. Rami, I know you've got to get going. I can keep switching from here. That's okay. Yeah, it's all good, man, if you have to step out for a bit.
Yep.
But I wanted to ask you something, Bob, and I'm conscious of... Yeah, mate.
Yeah, and I'll try and keep it clipped.
No, all good. Yeah, what were you going to say, Rami?
Also, we're getting closer to the well, by the time Bob's get to the airport,
Yeah.
I think we're getting very close to that deadline now.
Yeah, well, let's just...
Oh, yeah,
go
sure.
with whatever you got.
No, absolutely. Well, I can keep switching for 15 minutes, but that's all good, mate. No, it's all good. It's all good. Bob and I, we could chat for like 5 more hours. Days, that's it. That's it. No, look, Rami, all good. I can keep switching from here. Bob, I wanted to touch on the topic of made in Australia because you really sort of alluded to it. So these hats, for example, this hat in particular was made in Australia, this Make Australia Great Again hat. Now, this is pre-COVID, pre-2020. This company has now gone out of business. The one that made this isn't a Turning Point Australia hat. It was made in Australia, and it's just become incredibly impossible to actually manufacture anything here. So now we've got these hats where we cannot make them in Australia because we will make $0 on it, which is just not sustainable. So there's no green label on the ones we're actually making. And it's frustrating for me because I want to live my values. I want to manufacture these things here, but there's no manufacturers out there that can do it that can do it and make it sustainable. How do we fix that? How do we actually get Australia back on track with this?
I am very determined about this. And to some degree, Dialyse influenced my thinking here, but I was very well aware of what happened with bombs, the underwear people. A tariff, a punitive tariff. You want to buy underwear from overseas, you will pay 3 times the price because we're going to tariff the imports out of existence. And you with your free trade can stick it up. Well, we know where it goes.
The sun doesn't shine.
Yeah. Now, just to demonstrate who is free trading on Earth, the sugar industry is one of the biggest traded commodities in the world. It's not as big as grain, but it's very big. Now, during the down period of about 15 years, which was a historically long down period, it's a cyclical industry, but that was a very long period of down cycle. And one of the reasons why I helped. But during that period, the Europeans, probably the biggest producer of sugar in the world, beet sugar, they were on $700 a tonne. The Americans, with a closed market, you can't import into America, $700 a tonne. Thailand was $470 a tonne. Brazil was about $470 a tonne, cross-subsidised from ethanol. There's some other country that I'm forgetting, but so they're all on $700 a tonne or $470 a tonne. During that 15-year period, we were on $270 a tonne.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, so much for your free trade.
Yeah.
Who the bloody hell on earth is free? China's not.
Yeah.
America's not. The Europeans are not.
Yeah.
Brazil is not. Well, who the bloody hell is?
Yeah. And why are we doing this? Why are we doing this to ourselves?
Because we're run by a bunch. I think there's a lot of. See, the three countries are colonial countries: Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Canada's 36%. Australia's 4%. The rest of the world's 41%. Well, I think the colonial spot marks are flashing. We haven't grown up. You know, we grovelled and sycophanted and, hey, my son went to Yale, English, schools. Oh, he went to Cambridge. Yes, it's a very big time.
Yeah.
And a bunch of morons haven't produced a person of significance in the last, 50 years. Cambridge or
Sure.
Oxford. I think there's still a colonial mentality out there. See, I couldn't care less what other countries are doing. Right? They'll want to go running overseas and, saying I spoke to the president of China or, or whatever. I'd say, so what? I had a conversation with Albanese. You're not seriously going to put that bloke in England on our coins. You cannot be serious. We're putting a bloke on our coins who's never had a job, never worked in his life, right? Whatever kudos he's got is inherited from his parents, probably with a little bit of, inbreeding, a little bit of hemophiliac stuff in there. Morals of an alley cat. I know we won't go into that. How you going to put him on a coin? Well, let's say I suggest we put Ralph Honor on the coin.
Yeah.
The leader of the 49th Battalion that stopped the invasion of Australia. Why don't we put Ralph Honor on the coin? Why don't you put Tubatra on the coin? The leader of the Cockadoons that held the invasion by the British at bay for 25 years.
Yeah.
Why don't you put Tubatra on the coin? Right.
Yeah.
But what conceivable idiocy would put some, and I mean, do you believe in monarchs? They all swear when they go into Parliament, you have to swear allegiance to His or Her Majesty. Well, I've always said, no, I died before I swear the allegiance to anyway. But this year, I yelled it out at the top of my voice. No, I want to state publicly that I will not swear allegiance to a foreign monarch. Yeah. Not now or ever, or any other bloody monarch either.
Yeah.
And Liberal and Labor front bench say, good on you, Bob. What good on you? Well, why don't you do something about it?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm very proud of, that flag that has crosses St. George and crosses St. Andrew and St. Patrick
Yeah.
on it. But I think, my mob that came from Devon and Wales and the islands of Scotland, I don't think they're very, very inclined to monarchs from London.
Yeah.
I don't think, they're on that side of the family.
I've had this chat before with the head of the Monarchist League and said, isn't it a matter of time before we just become a monarchy? A republic rather. Isn't it the time is coming when the monarchy is going to end essentially, and we're just going to have to become a republic?
We don't have to. Surely we aspire.
Yeah.
Surely we believe that all men are born free and equal.
Yeah.
Well, you can't believe that all men are free and equal when you got your coin.
Yeah.
A foreign monarch, And I'm anything but anti my English heritage, I wave that flag at all available opportunities.
Yeah.
And that branch of my family, we lost a son in the First World War, we lost a son in the Second World War.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of all my forebears too. And you forget about that.
But yeah.
But could I, we're getting to conclusion now.
Sure.
Conclude that, say that I love Australians and I don't want us to be a dying race. And I want us to have big families and have all the joy. We've got quarter of a football oval at the back of our house, and our cousins, and we had 5 kids, and they're all their friends, and there'd be 20 kids there screaming and yelling and football around, cheating and lying. And it's just so much fun to have a big family.
Absolutely.
There's always some excitement going on.
Yes.
And then they have big families,
Yeah.
And they're fun places to be. I'm not saying that we deny power either. They're very powerful families as well. And I won't be apologising for anyone by saying that. And I would hope that Christian Porter, my second cousin, would say the same thing on that side. And on other sides of my family, well, great-grandfather Howard had died the richest man in Queensland. Well, I won't be apologising for that,
Yeah.
We worked hard and we took great risks to get there. And we set the way for a lot of people. So, I want to conclude on this note, if I could, please, Joel.
Sure.
I was the unit historian. People of my age were at war in Indonesia. Met that dreadful fellow called Sukarno, and they've been wonderful neighbours to us. I can't speak more highly of Indonesians, but this is going back 60 years. And we're at war there, then straight out of that, it was only very brief. We're at war in Vietnam, and people my age, probably 1 in 2, 1 in 5, most certainly wore uniform. But I was I was platoon commander, which was sergeant. Sometimes it was lieutenants, but I became a lieutenant later on. But I was the unit historian. So I went and saw a colonel and I said, hey, listen, we covered ourselves up. Glory in the First World War. Battle honours everywhere. But in the Second World War, it's all negative, it fell back, failed the whole ground, wilted on fire. He said, well, what do you want to do, Captain? I want to go down to the RSL. It's only 18 years after we finished it. Go down the RSL. And, well, maybe we were a fallback battalion, but a lot of the stuff is doctored up. So maybe we weren't. Yeah, right, we'll go down and do that. So you don't need permission, do you, Captain? I hope you go AWOL every night. Smoke. Anyone here know anything about the 49th in the war? Only about 100, 150 people there at the RSL. Bloke yelled out, yeah, mate, come down here. He said the 49th, on unit historian. And he said they were the worst hit of all. When they were relieved at Santander, there are only 28 of them able
Mm.
to walk out unassisted from the trenches. He said, you know how many men left Port Moresby? 783 men left Port Moresby. That was all that was left. It was 28. He said 28. I said 783. He said 28. Then he said 783, and I said 28. And I walked away because Cloncurry boys don't cry.
That's it. And you don't want to see that happen to the nation.
I'm the 49th Battalion. We stopped our country from being invaded. Most of us gave our lives for our future, crippled after the war. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there is that sentiment in the country, isn't there, that we're losing the thread, and the adults have left the room.
See, it's always a small group of people that really do the fighting and that lead. And yeah. I mean, there was a bloke 2,000 years ago, and, she sort of really had no. I think there were 12 people when they tortured him to death, nailed him on a piece of wood. I think there were 12, 15 people. That was all he had. But that 12 or 15 people, that's grown into almost a third of the planet. All right, well, we have to grow Christianity in Australia out as well. And if we're small in number, then I enjoy the fight. I never liked playing. We never played much when we were playing against lousy teams. When we were playing against the big boys, I loved it.
Yeah.
So if there's a challenge out there and there's a fight and we are the big underdogs, well, bring it on, brother.
I'm into that.
Bring it on. And I warn you that, I'm not noted for being nice to my enemies.
I had a professor, Augustus Zimmerman, he said to me, Joel, I can't think of a more exciting time to be alive than to fight against the totalitarian government.
I think that's a great call. I mean, that really is a great call. Yeah, I mean, in the Jockey Peterson era, we faced the challenge of creating great wealth for our people. And I think the people in Queensland in that period, towards the end of our reign, would have been the richest people on earth by a long way. It wasn't just, I did my own figures working as an unskilled labourer at Mount Isa Mines, and I was on $284,000 a year, a free board and accommodation, 3 beautiful meals a day, 7 days a week. Well, anyway, I rang up on Thursday and I got my start on Monday.
It's a good life. Yeah, it's a
what
good
a
life.
wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful
Yeah.
place that they had created for us, our forebears, and the great battles that they had to get there, and when Jockey Peterson opened up the mines, the communist trade union said, in the jaws of Utah, Well, actually it was Thies Brothers, it's terrible for anecdotes, but there's a great story of the Thies Brothers. They imported the first bulldozers into Australia back in the 30s, whenever it was, the first bulldozers. And when they took a bulldozer into the mines in New South Wales, where they're still using pit ponies, the massive strikes, the whole of the coal industry and New South Wales closed down, right? And Thies Brothers came from Queensland, this was New South Wales. And so all the boys are in the pub because the massive strikes, so all the, coal miners are all in the pub drinking. And this bloke was drinking and he said, so where do you come from, mate? And he said, I come from Queensland. That prick buddy, Thies comes from Queensland. He said, yeah, my name's Thies, actually. He said, so you wouldn't want to be related to that mob? He said, no, that's me. He said, what do you mean that's me? Oh, I'm Les Thies. He said, what are you doing drinking the pub here with? with just workers. He said, mate, I'm a dozer driver. You know, I'm not a plutocrat or anything like that. I'm a dozer driver. Naturally, if we're on strike, well, I'm down the pub on strike, yeah. Yeah, but you own it all. We're striking against you. Oh, it's just not the way I see it, you know. Anyway, mate, can I buy you a beer? And this bloke said, hey, everybody, hey, this Les Thies. Like we're striking against he's one of us, mate. He drives a dozer. I went back to work.
That's an amazing
Good on
story.
you, Alfie, in
Yeah,
Australia.
there you go, mate.
I realised he was one of us.
Yeah.
I went back to work.
Because they thought the machine was a threat.
Yeah, but once it was established that the
Yeah.
threat was coming from one of them,
Yeah.
that was all right. You know, I mean, it was class struggle and, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know,
Yeah.
aggressive, you know, working class solidarity.
Yeah.
A bit hard to be working class when you're on 300,000 a year as we were then, yeah. But you know, a great story and so typical and indicative of Australia. But Les created the almost by himself the coal industry of Australia. We're a coal importing nation when Les wanted to export coal.
Yeah.
Everyone thought he was mad. But you know, if you take out Lawrence Hartnett, who created the Holden motor car, 62% of our motor vehicles are made in Australia during the 80s. So, you know, truly great Australian, Lawrence Hartnett. Essington Lewis created the steel industry in Australia. And he started work, Lawrence Hartnett started work on the shop floor. He was from an aristocratic family, but Vickers demanded that you want to be an executive of Vickers, you started as a diesel fitter, and fitter and turner. And so we started, you know, as fitter and turner. The founder of the steel industry in Australia and the founder of BHP, the biggest mining company in the world, he when he died, his total earthly wealth was 1.7 million, and around about the time of his death, they came out with what the Prime Minister of Australia, Paul Keating, owned, and he had $23 million worth of assets.
Right.
One bloke had created the steel industry of Australia, and BHP, the biggest mining company on earth. That's what he did for his country. He ran the Australian economy during the war and took no money for it. You know, he would have liked the money because he was never rich. Yeah.
Bob, can I ask you? Your assistant mentioned that you had a question for me, which I thought was interesting, but it left a big. I was like, I wonder what the question could be.
Well, I'm wondering how many organisations there are like yourself, and you know, I went down with people associated with you to all the way to Adelaide to speak to them. But I'm doing my best to try and tie the various threads together. I have a national profile and I enjoy an extraordinary popularity. And I told my son when he was 12 years of age, with cattle property up in the Gulf, you know, but I'm not a cattleman, you know, but all the same, we did musters. I said, when you got the horses in the yard, you never ride the horse called popularity. It'll buck you off every time.
Yeah.
There's a bloke 2,000 years ago walking down the street. Oh, Hosanna, Hosanna, you're the greatest on there. Prostrating himself.
Right.
Same mob next week. Crucifying. Yeah, well, just keep that in your mind, right? You never, ever ride the horse popularity. Well, I'm riding at the present moment, but before it bucks me off, I want to do a big muster here in Australia. And the Gumtree movement. Now, you people represent the Gumtree movement, right? People I spoke to in Adelaide, they represent the Gumtree movement. Diley is a good example of the Gumtree movement.
Yeah.
I don't know Andrew G all that well, but I would bet London to a brick on.
Right.
That he'd beat.
And Chocky too. You've mentioned Big Chocky as well.
Well, there's a number of major commentators who are terribly popular in Australia with a huge following But I think the reason they have such a following is Jockey Peterson used to say all the time to me, and I was one of the boys stood up to Joe and he didn't like it at all, and another bloke called Turner, who should have been Premier, and people said I should have been too. Well, I don't know about that, but Neil most said anyway. But we stood up to Joe, but we were his strongest supporters too. But Joe used to say, quoted from the Bible, people without leadership will perish, Bob. Well, yeah, Joe, well, I've got a junior flick to you on a daily basis. And that's the way I interpret the remarks. But older and wiser, I think they're trying to get a message through to me, and I wasn't listening, a young smart ass, but older and wiser, yeah. Now, you people at the leadership, you, Joel, not me, you're the leadership. You've got to come together, and we've got to assert ourselves and take no prisoners. There's other political parties out there. They say they're right wing. Well, I got no idea what that means. Yep. You say I'm extreme right wing. I have no idea what that means. And they're terms that come out of the 40s and 50s.
Yep.
Really, I think you really don't know much or understand much if you use those terms. There are modern terms like wokey, which I think are very, very relevant. I thought that election in America was the wokies versus the anti-wokies. Or, no, not anti-wokies, non-wokies. But that woman was what I'd call a wokie that ran for the Democrat Party. The fact that she was brainless as well. It's got a little to do with it, right, but here in Australia, and it seems to me that, Trump's older, but Vance, J.D. Vance, seems to me to be very good. So there's very strong leadership there. Don't worry about how big the dog is in the fight. Worry about how big the fight is in the dog. And that's where you've come in. Yeah.
I'm hyper aware of the fact that we've got to have a coalition, a broad Australia First coalition. And Australia First is the phrase I'd use to define the policy, because I don't think it's a left v right thing. I think it is very much our interests. The interests of the Australian people are not being kept in mind by Labor or Liberal or the Greens or the Nationals. It's just not. And I think this is a correction that our nation needs in the life cycle of our country's history. As a matter of fact, the projects you have spoken of in this podcast and in Sam Bamford's podcast make sense. And there's no reason why our government shouldn't be pursuing them, except if they're being bought off. That's my view.
That fuel and Bradfield and the bridging scheme, we're talking about $150 or $200 billion worth. Well, the tax revenue from that alone is $25 billion. I didn't mention this. I'm sorry to keep going sideways, but
it's all right.
Qatar exports the same amount of gas as Australia. 10 years ago, Qatar was getting 29,000 million for their gas. We were getting 623 million for our gas. Who the hell did that?
Yep.
Who the hell sold our gas for 6 cents and we got to buy it back at $16.60, which we can't? So that the whole bloody nation is collapsing. I'm surprised that Victoria, then I thought, they're freezing to death because they can't afford to buy Australian gas either. Well, there's third biggest industrial centre in Australia has announced its closure. It's not that everyone knows that or it could happen or anything. They've announced its closure. What the government is just throwing money at them to just keep them going till they get through the next election.
Yeah.
But,
So tell me, how do you coddle a bunch of people together? I mean, I'm sure you've been in the political game in the Parliament 51 years. How do you coddle a bunch of people with their own egos and values and whatever?
Well,
Isn't it leadership at the end of the day? Like with Trump, they had a figure. With Nigel Farage in the UK, they have a figure they can get behind. Where's our Nigel? Where's our...
well, I think you'll have to do with myself. That's pretty poor, second-rate version. And I wish I could name other people. I wish I could. I mean, I had a degree of loyalty to John Howard, and also I came out. I was when Joe went down. I was the National Party in Queensland. I don't think there was anyone else could make that claim. The bloke who took the leadership when beat Neil Turner, and Neil came back into the house. He's a clone of myself, right? And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, Joe's right. Someone has to go to Canberra. We're not going to fix this bloody nation up unless we start in Canberra." And he said, "Well, it's obviously you." My father had died, he had a very big popularity, and I had a very big margin in my state electorate, heart of Kennedy. And through rugby league, I knew half the bloody population in North Queensland. So he said, "Well, that's obviously you." And I said, "Well, I don't know if you noticed it here, Turner, but I happen to be running the show here." He said, "I have noticed that, actually." And I said, "Well, I can't leave unless you're prepared to take over here." And he said, "No, I want to be Premier." I decided then. Yeah, he said, "If I'm Premier in Queensland, of course, we've got the numbers and you become the federal leader." That thought has crossed my mind. With due modesty, I observed.
Yeah.
Well, we got beaten, and the bloke that beat Turner offered 18 portfolios. He promised 18 people that they'd get a portfolio. And there's Lawrence Borg.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Lawrence's.
Yeah.
Lawrence said, "He promised me." Well, poor stupid you, eh? Poor stupid you.
Yeah.
Because you made a colossal enemy out of yourself and Turner, and you got nothing for it. You're a nobody backbencher. Well, you become a nobody premier. No, he didn't become premier. He got the term nobody leader of the opposition. But Bobby Borbich, who I personally believed is a contemptible person in every respect, he became leader. And that was a demonstration of how the party had not only lost its way, but was going in the opposite direction. And through the vagaries of the political system, he became premier. So once our people of Queensland, these are people that voted for Jorgie Peterson for 50 years almost, when they saw what they had in Borbich, they gave him the biggest hiding ever recorded in Queensland history. I was in a debate, I was on a panel with him in his decidement, and when I spoke, he would put his hand on my arm and say, "Oh, no, I've got to correct you there, right?" And the third time he did it, I said, "Do it once again, and I'll hit you so hard that your teeth will be all over this table. And I don't want you touching this."
Yeah.
And but I don't know what's wrong with the system. How we could go from a Neil Turner to that, I don't know.
Yeah.
And to give the sort of people that they were, the Neil Turners of this world, we're having a huge debate with the Liberal Party, we were national, they were Liberals, and we hated each other. And it was over, they were building a $40 million heritage site. It wasn't heritage, it was something else. Absolutely stupid. Arts centre, right? We didn't know what arts were going in there, but anyway. And it wasn't paintings or anything like that. It was just arts. Anyway, 40 million. And I said, "You've got to be joking, Premier. I got settlers carting water in buckets from the pub 200 metres so they can have a shower or a drink of water."
Yeah.
And this is outrageous when the Liberals were doing it. So, and Jorgie Peters probably anyway. But there's a bloke Liberal behind me yelling out, a bloody national party. He wouldn't understand what culture means. What's culture stand? And turned the lens around and grabbed him by the throat and pulled him out of his seat, the necktie in it, and pulled him out of his seat. He said, "We do so know what culture means. It means agriculture." And, well, I mean, they were the sort of people that we were.
But sorry, Bob, going back to it, you mentioned you're putting your hand up and saying, "Hey, I don't have time. I won't have the popular horse for long.
Very long. It'll bust me off."
So now is the time to build a coalition.
That is correct.
Right.
Whilst that horse will lead all the other horses. So we've got a short time frame here, but really, it relies very much on organisations such as your own.
Right.
It doesn't float otherwise. Santa Maria may have had more power than anyone else except Theodore and Chifley. And Santa Maria had a lot to do with the creation of Theodore. Mannix got Theodore to run the anti-conscription movement in Australia, and he gave the Prime Minister of Australia a terrible flogging twice, Theodore. But history books are still to be written about just how much. But Menzies had lunch with Santa Maria every Thursday. They were very, very close. But he had a program on the television which was huge watching audience all over Australia. And he had a column in the Australian newspaper, and the column said that there were people in their 30s that were investing hundreds of millions of dollars of their investment monies and superannuation monies. And this is just not good. And when Big Bank in England blew up, their representative in Singapore, he hadn't invested hundreds of millions of dollars. He was 24 years of age and invested thousands of millions of dollars, which all blew out the window. Took down Barings Bank. I can't remember. It was one of the major banks in England. Went down the chute. But Santa Maria was wrong, because he said they were moving 200 million. They were moving 2,000 million. And I started reading avidly all of his columns and watching him on the radio and television, very avidly, because the bloke had perspicacity, we could see what. But that role needs to be taken up by people like yourself. And I ain't no Robert Menzies, so you.
No, I'm on it.
It's every week with me.
Bob, I respect my elders, and I respect the knowledge and the answers, and I am at the humble mercy of people like yourself that have been around the block, and you've seen what's happened and why it hasn't happened, and what we should be doing and why it's not being done. And look, I'm here to help. But again, I'm just a construction guy from the industry. We do have a large audience of, I think we're getting close to 700,000 followers online.
That's great.
Yeah, and when it comes to elections, we have about 1.5% of voters use our cards, our how to vote cards. They ask us to vote. We've got about 700 million views in the last 3 or 4 years. I think in last week we did something crazy, like 50 million views in a week, which was crazy. But all of this is for the purpose of, we need to get the pen that's writing the legislation. We need to recapture this country. I'm not interested in running. I think where we're going wrong is people don't know how to breathe their values into politics. They don't know how to actually get elected. They don't know how to deal with these bureaucrats that are running this country and these corporations that are bought off our politicians. And they have been bought off. I really do believe that our politicians are in these major parties. It's a career path for them. It's not about service. We used to call them the honourable XYZ. I'm happy to call you the honourable Bob Katter, but these other politicians, I can't bring myself to it. They used to.
Yeah, but I didn't aspire to politics. I mean,
Yeah.
I was making my own fortune in mining, and as a sideline, I made a fortune in cattle.
Yeah.
And I love making money, and I found it really exciting taking all the risks and everything. And sort of replaced rugby league life.
Yeah.
And but I was having real good fun out there until Whitlam got elected, and they asked me to stand down as secretary of the local country party, because I was completely uninterested and bored by the whole thing. And so they stood me down from the local branch of the party. I don't know if I had any political aspirations, they're now finished. But what got me suddenly involved was Whitlam. And I wasn't Robinson Crusoe, famous speech by the leader of the Labor Party, because there were 20 of us all spoke, in attacking Whitlam. I don't know what that legislation was in the state parliament, but I can't remember the Labor leader, but he said, there's just no gratitude in this world. We all burst our laughing because we all had our seats in Parliament to the giant swing against Whitlam. We'd all got elected on the giant swing.
Yeah.
The Labor Party was left with 6 seats in Queensland. A record only broken by Borbridge. There must have been 8 seats because Borbridge broke the record for the least number of seats. But the leader of the Labor Party said, there's just no gratitude in this world, and we all burst out laughing. Because I we all owed our seats to it.
That's it. Yeah.
I went down to the library, to the National Art Gallery to look at blue poles.
Yeah.
And whoever I was with said, why are you so taken with this painting? I said, I owe so much to blue poles. It was the final COVID stuff. The Australian people couldn't understand.
Yeah.
Or they'd go into a shop and they needed $20 to buy a loaf of bread,
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's exaggerating, but inflation we hit 26% in 1 quarter.
Yeah.
1 month under Whitlam, it hit 26% and was scary. But people didn't understand that. But they understand spending $54 million on a piece of canvas that people had dropped paint on. They understood that. And they understood putting, $5 tax on coffins. How could that bring a government down?
Yeah.
Ordinary people understand that.
Yeah.
They don't understand when you start talking about inflation and all those things.
No.
But that arrogant fellow, again, I'm a terrible one for anecdotes. Des Frawley, that is the outrageous character, kicked me and said, now I can prove that I did not kick that dog because I'm holding a letter here. Write the letter.
Yeah.
What letter?
Yeah.
So I say again, Mr. Speaker, that person, I'm holding the letter from that person, the owner of the dog, that proof that I did not kick that. Anyway, but Frawley, he was speaking at the National Convention, Constitutional Convention, and I was sort of head of our delegation, even though I was pretty young, and but Frawley was speaking, and Gough Whitlam, in his arrogance as Prime Minister, Mr. Frawley, please, he was attacking the Senate, Frawley. He said, I'm not, he said, you're trying to abolish the Senate, Gough, I make exceptions, Mr. Frawley, for people like yourself. I think that you should be in the upper house in Queensland. And Frawley said, there you go, Gough. You don't even know. We don't have an upper house in Queensland. Gough said, I know, Mr. Frawley, I know.
That's funny.
But Gough was good at that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But Frawley turned around and he said, Oh, he effed me that time, didn't he?
Yeah.
It's off his books, Constitutional Convention.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but they were all extremely popular people.
Yeah.
And how the party could have gone from those people to the Bobby Borbages of this world,
Yeah.
I simply don't know or understand. And I can tell you a number of stories about that fellow, but I'm not here to run him down.
No. Well, Bob, winding the podcast up, I've thoroughly enjoyed this chat. And I think that, look, Australia certainly needs a turning point. I did notice that you wrote on your hand Charlie Kirk's name. Just curious about why that was.
I don't follow the media, it psychs me, I don't want to be psyched. I'll do the psyching, thank you. We're getting 1 million hits off on our podcast, whatever it's called. And so I'll be doing the psyching and on the other way around. So I didn't know much about it, but this case caught my attention. And I watched Trump's first election campaign, which is very exceptional for me. But I could be interested in what was going on in America. And I watched this last campaign very closely, what was going on in America. And I would to heaven we had those forces at work here. But as I say, I never got joy in winning games against second-rate teams. The impossibility of the task that a little bunch of nobodies like you and I can take control of this nation and turn it around and point it in the right direction. Jockey Peterson, when he was elected leader, I watched him on television. Oh, it was the end of the country party. He can't string three words together coherently. He had any Rudolph Valentino in the looks department. And I don't think the word intellect is a word I'd use in conjunction with him. So that's the end of the country party. Well, it didn't interest me much.
Yeah.
I was out to make a squillion ball. And well, he went from 17.5% to 42% of the first preference vote and 64% two-party preferred. Not bad going.
Not bad.
Not bad going. And he did the things that you and I have talked about today. And he read his Bible, the Gospels, every day of his life. And the greatest lady in Australian history is probably an obscure lady called Pearl Logan. 23% of Australians lived in small towns back in the 50s and 60s, and they had no high schools. So 23% population of Australia never got a secondary education. She got the remote area allowance, which enabled the quality of education in Australia. That is a dimension that you can't even think about. She got the first medical school built in 44 years. The existing medical expand, and they wouldn't allow any other medical schools to be built. So we had a horrific shortage of supply of doctors in Australia. People were dying everywhere, no doctors. And she was the one that turned that around. She put me into the blackfellow portfolio, and I thought, the Jockey Best put me there because she wanted to get rid of me. And it was, graveyard politicians.
Yeah.
I thought, a bit coming for Joe Hill, but find his work cut out for him. So I decided that I'd do nothing, because if I did anything good for the blackfellas, Joe hated him at the time. I'd be out the window. So I thought, I'll just do nothing,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
well, poor mate Logan made it perfectly clear that I was not put there to do nothing. I was there to fix it up. And the state president say, "You will fix it up." Oh, what? After 200 years of F-ups, I'm going to fix it up, am I? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when Joe wants to sack me, I expect you to back me, to protect my back. Well, so a year and a half later, he said, he rang me again. I said, how many times? There's 13 times she rang me up, wanted to sack you. And
Yeah.
you said you're back. I'm backing. The only reason you're there is because I'm backing it. And I said, yeah, well, you wouldn't be backing her if it wasn't for Pearl Logan.
Yeah.
That'd be true too. He said,
Yeah.
and Pearl wanted to fix it up. So I
Yeah.
had to go in there and fix it up. Yeah. And I found out, and there's a point here in this story, I never thought about it till recently when I started publishing the figures of it, increase in the public service under Labor. It boggles the mind, the increase in public service. But I thought about it. I actually eliminated 2,500 jobs. And because I went around and asked all my brother cousins or black fellas, my brother cousin, I said, well, what do you want to happen? They wouldn't say it outright. They wanted to get rid of the white fellas who were making all the decisions. They would run the show for themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, well, why not? But I had a very enlightened group on the committee. Mick Vivas, who played for Australia for 8 years, but Mick was very bright and he was extremely wealthy. He put all the money back home and bought neighbouring dairy farms.
Yeah.
And Dougie Jennings, who broke with the Jennings family and made his own fortune in cattle up in the Gulf country. All these super smart blokes. But I didn't find this out years later. I said to Jennings, did you say to Bajorki Peterson that if he touched me, you'd touch him? He said, those are the exact words that I use. What Katter is doing needs to be done. And you touch him and I'll touch you. And he'd brought down the government in Victoria. He was not the person to try for.
No.
Yeah.
He was legit. He was legit.
And they had an obsession with honesty and decency and government. But with Pearl and he running interference and Sparks, the state president, wanting the whole thing to be fixed up.
Yeah.
Mostly because he didn't want land rights.
Yeah.
But all the same, he did. So, but when Bajorki Peterson got a handle on what I was doing, he thought I was a university love of blackfellas, wokey. And he had that badly wrong. When he realised, and what really rocked him was when Rosendale was put in as number 2 in the department. And he said, Rosendale from Oak Farm? Yeah, he's the son of your mate that founded Oak Farm. So I had a stricken look on his face. He thought I was from that mob.
Yeah, yeah.
I was from that mob.
Yeah.
And, but then he started claiming credit for it all, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
He started claiming credit for it. But, I just asked the people what they wanted. And though they didn't say it in as many words, they wanted the white fellas out.
Yeah.
They wanted to run their own affairs.
Yeah.
I can't remember the word native title.
Never came up. Never came up.
But these people are not Pumperau. They're not from Pumperau.
Yeah.
They're from all the tribes. There's only one tiny little tribe.
Yeah.
That's the native title holders of Pumperau. What are the other 90% going to be dispossessed?
Yeah.
It's 97% of Yarrabah. None of them come from Yarrabah. What are you dispossessed? But that just indicated that they had never spoken to a black fella, a real fed income black fella.
Yeah.
The loudmouths in the cities that purport to be spokesmen. They listen to.
No idea.
But,
Yeah.
really, it was sort of funny, because all they wanted was private ownership of a block of land.
Yeah.
Same as everyone else on the planet.
Exactly.
Well, why would we not give it to them? But that committee voted unanimously they will get private freehold title. But the shadowy into the Jesuits is involved here because Frankie Brennan, his father was Chief Justice of the High Court. His grandfather was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in Queensland. Frankie comes from very powerful people. But Frankie was pulling a lot of strings here. But one of the strings he pulled that was very, very good, he said it's inalienable. So you got a freehold title, but you couldn't sell it to a non-community resident. And later on, after this was all over, I was reading up in America, and not surprisingly, the American government did what I did, which was given the right to freehold title. But they didn't put the inalienability clause, and over 30 years, all of the Red Indian land was gone. They'd sold it,
Yeah.
And, well, if you go to the Midwest where I come from, which is 1 million square kilometres of prime sheep cattle country, over 30 years, most of that generation, those generational families will be gone.
Yeah. It's sad. It's very sad.
No, well,
Yeah.
not necessarily sad. They want to do other things, you know what I mean?
Right.
They want to become an engineer or,
Yeah.
they want to do other things.
So what happens is the big corporations end up buying it up, and then
At the end of the day, well,
yeah.
it's funny in cattle, really we've kept the big people at bay in cattle, not
right.
anywhere else.
But isn't what happens is like get big or get out. So it becomes less owners, but larger owners, and then a corporation comes in and deals with them.
The third generation sells it.
Yeah. As we were chatting about before, I'm in the construction industry. I used to work in high school with my dad on the construction site. It's kind of a bit crazy, the fact that a lot of kids can't work on the construction site without, for free to get experience. It's unless it's for family, you really can't do that. And but I feel like working with your hands on site is something that can really help, instill some values into the kid. There's something about farmers and tradies. They're really rooted in reality when it comes to life.
Good call. Canberra and the state governments have been driven by ideology for a long time now. And blokes like Bajocki Peterson, however you measure a premier, there's no comparison with Red Ted Theodore, who recreated Australia, easily the most important person in our history. I didn't say that. Malcolm Fraser said that. I didn't say that. Paul Keating said that. And there'd be very little I would agree with Paul Keating nor Malcolm Fraser for that matter.
Yeah.
But I would agree with them on that. But yeah, there's no comparison with those two people. And neither of them would have the slightest scintilla of ideology. They wouldn't even be able to spell ideology. No, Johnny Peterson wouldn't anyway. So, unless your thinking is rooted in reality, and that doesn't mean that you're excused from thinking. On the contrary, I think that it's vitally important that you think, but it sure would be nice if your thinking was sourced from reality instead of some ideology. And all of our ideologies are foreign. They're not really suitable to a country that is empty and one of the smallest countries on earth. And I'm just starting a new book. My history book was a moderate bestseller.
Yeah,
That's
right. That's right.
But it starts off with the Chinese warships circling Australia before Christmas. And I said, I felt like I was a road accident victim on the side of the road watching the kite hawks hovering over me, birds of carrion. And there is a quotation in history that is relevant to Australia. Probably the adjective I'd use is unnerving, fear-engendering, and it comes from von Clausewitz on war, which is regarded as the greatest work in human history on war. Von Clausewitz said that land without people will be sought out by a people without land. Well, I don't think any of us have any doubts as to where the land without people is. Where the people without land is, well, I'll leave that for others to conjecture. But when I'm circled by warships from China, and I know that my country has no remotest ability to defend itself, I think we are in a very bad way. Now, even worse than that is the complete lack of Christian value systems. Now, when I say Christian values, I don't mean you go to church on Sunday, although I'd like to think you probably should, but I'm not talking about that. Now, I'm talking about a person called Jesus Christ preached that we should have we have a responsibility to our fellow man to look after them and to make the world a better place. And that really is what Christianity is about. Well, there's a complete lack of that in the Australian psyche. I was talking to an American school teacher who migrated to Australia. She was Australian. And he said, the thing that struck me about Australia is there's no structural belief system. And that's what struck me when I went to America. It was the other way around, that I was just doing a quick ethanol tour. I've only ever been overseas for about 7 or 8 days. Just a quick ethanol tour into Dakota and Sao Paulo in Brazil. But I got sick, so I was sitting at home watching television for about a week. I said, the thing that caught me about America was 3 things. 1, they were very militaristic. 2, they were very Christian. By comparison with any other country on earth, they are very Christian. And thirdly, they are very patriotic. And I wish I had 1/3 of those 3 things in my country.
Yeah.
I spoke to one of the 4 top brass who's been newly appointed in the Australian Army. And I said, if you're the boss of Australia, what would you do? And he'd say tanks or artillery pieces or drones and missiles. He said, I'd do everything humanly possible to change of attitude by the Australian people.
Wow. Okay.
Ever seeing this thing the same as it hit me when I went to America? But, I was brought up in super patriotic family, I suppose. We lost a son in the First World War. We lost a son in the Second World War. Christian Porter was a second cousin of mine, and so Christian is the same family. All right, and all my father's cousins and uncles and everyone, they were all in uniform, in the Second World War. All the family photographs that they were all getting married in that period, they're all in uniform. But all right, if someone should step to the fore, then it should be me. I was brought up very heavy Christian.
Yeah.
Was
Was that mainly from your mum's side or your dad's side?
My mum's side, almost absolutely. Now, not saying my father didn't go to church every Sunday, because he did, but because my mother had very profound. She had been Anglican, but the way things were in those days, she eventually agreed to become a Catholic, but she was always Christian. But we were profoundly brought up to say our prayers and put our trust in Jesus. Our political party, we're a little tiny group of us, but the very big family on the Atherton Tablelands behind Cairns, an English family, probably the most prominent family on the Atherton Tablelands, close to 100,000 people live up there. But he said, always vote for the KP, because they talk about Jesus and they're not ashamed of it. And They do it all the time. Well, that's a fair call. Shani Canute's state member there, and you get to Shani's car and he starts talking to Jesus. You're supposed to join him. Anyway, but I think that gives you the sort of resilience that you need. And Christians, there's no doubt, are being persecuted in Australia. The leader of the biggest denomination, Archbishop Hollingworth, they completely destroyed him in every way. Having completely destroyed him, they left it at that. Then the next one was Pell. So they managed to put him in jail for 2 years. 81 people said he was over there. One person said he was over there. And if ever I know anything, and I know I shouldn't say this, but if ever I've seen a bloke that I'm certain will burn in hell, it's Dan Andrews. I mean, I just think there is a bloke that no matter how you measure people, and making us penniless wrong would be not far beyond, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's evil. But, ironically enough, the Prime Minister of Australia, John Howard, was a very strong Christian. People underestimate his Christianity. Scott Morrison gave a brilliant speech when he was leaving Parliament. I wish he'd given it a start-up.
Yeah. Why is it on the way out they say these things?
Yeah. But Scott was profoundly and genuinely committed to Christianity. Kevin Rudd, you could get a fight over theology at the drop of a hat with Kevin, whether you liked him or whether you didn't. He had very passionate beliefs, Christian beliefs. So, if you go through all the people that have led Australia, it's ironic that even in our day and age, they still seem to come to the fore. Now, having said that, I'm more interested in the persecution at the present moment. But what we as Christians must do is assert ourselves. So I innocently got up, as I do, and asked an innocent little question. Mr. Speaker, question for the Treasurer. Treasurer, is it correct that you're going to take billions, that's B for Bravo, off the Australian people and give it to an organisation where they run around in a circle and whoever comes first, they get a prize? And an organisation that had the attention of the world and used that attention to denigrate, spit upon and humiliate Christianity in the most puerile, infantile performance that no self-respecting undergraduate would have been associated with. Is that the organisation that you're going to take billions of dollars off the taxpayers and give it to them? And he said, yes. He looked all.
The French Olympics, right? This was after the French Olympics.
But he couldn't sit down fast enough, right?
Yeah.
They love picking on Christians.
Yeah.
But when they start getting called anti-Christian, they're starting to run for cover. And this was a classic case of it. Where he sat and said, yes, I don't know whether Milton Dick is a Christian. I suspect he is, but Speaker of the House, no, Mr. Speaker. He did not answer the question, and he will answer the question. He said, yes, I remember Kennedy is correct. So the poor beggar, he got up and looked at the sky and mumbled and, trembled. But he was scared of being called anti-Christian, right? He's scared of it. And that is how we have to assert ourselves. Now, we're underway in Cairns. I'm pretty confident we'll get over 1,000 people 2 or 3 days before Christmas. We'll sing Christmas carols on the Esplanade, where there's thousands of people. And we'll have, a big, huge presentation. And one of the blokes that runs the council up there is a very strong Christian.
Yeah.
So if we'll have any difficulty getting permits and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
He'll be marching with us. So that's what we're doing, and we hope that will lead other people throughout Australia. There's a very beautiful family called the Hockeys, and they were the missionaries at Dulmiji, little
Oh, yeah, I know Dulmiji. Yeah.
settlement.
Yeah.
And very near and dear to my heart. I had cattle up in the Gulf country, and a few of those blokes at Dormitory have their own cattle now. Pretty big actually for some. And but they were the missionaries that ran Dormitory for about 30 years. They're builders now, the back of Cairns, a little place called Watsonville, and they were having Christmas carols at Watsonville. Like there's 150 people on this. Watsonville is in a state of mind. It's not a place.
Yeah.
And there's just a shed and some toilet facilities, at Watsonville. And but it was really beautiful. There's 150 people. I don't know where the hell they came from,
Yeah.
But I want it to be done at the palace, in front of the palace, at Paranella Park, which is a famous tourist destination in North Queensland. And before Christmas, Christmas carols at Paranella Park, and I think we get a fair crowd.
Yeah.
Then we'll move down to the Esplanade, and we'll let people know that it's not about the television. Oh, buy more food.
Yeah.
Oh, buy more presents. Oh, buy. This is Christmas. I just hope to be around those people that have made that decision without ever mentioning that it's Jesus Christ's birthday.
Absolutely.
They'll make squillions of dollars out of it.
Yeah.
And it's the big thing in the Australian calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about Jesus Christ. When Christmas comes around, and we're going to put out a map of all of the events happening for Christmas carols, celebrating Jesus across Australia. Because I totally agree. The problem with who we're up against is cultural Marxists. They want to destroy everything that made Australia great, our shared Christianity, our shared history, our shared patriotic Anzacs that passed during the wars. So they demonize everything so they can replace it with something new. And so a lot of people, I've been encouraging them to run at local council as well as state and federal, because local, a lot of this stuff's coming through. And so thank you for the thumbs up on this, because I feel that we have abdicated the field. We aren't actually having those discussions at a local level. And as a result, these cultural communists come in with their long march through the institutions. And so I'm trying to do what I can to not only make Christmas again, but also Australia Day again. I think we should be shutting down the Harbour Bridge on Australia Day, and we should be doing a huge parade with bagpipes and drums and our veterans, and we should shut down the city. We should have 1 million people there celebrating what Australia is.
Just before we leave that subject, I'm a published historian, and Murdoch Press, I don't control the launch of the book. They had Kevin Rudd launch the book to over 1,000 people at the book festival here in Sydney, and Barry Cassidy to 1,000 people in Melbourne. And if you look at the most important people in Australian history, there's no comparison really with Red Ted Theodore. And Chifley was very important, but he was an acolyte and a creation of but Red Ted Theodore, his brother was a Christian brother, and he had sisters, nuns, and when he was the most powerful man in Australia, he was for a considerable period of time, he would twice a week go down the big government limousine and take his two sisters who are nuns here in Sydney out shopping, for the day. But as a kid, his father had put up no democracy but Jesus, big signs throughout the house.
Yeah.
But Red Ted walked from Adelaide to the Murchison Goldfields in Western Australia, then walked back into Adelaide, then walked up the centre, turned right to go to the goldfields at the back of Cairns. For the third time in his life, he was sent down a mine where people were going to die. Once again, he called a strike, even though he was only 19 years of age when he called the first strike.
Yeah.
to no avail. They went down the mine and 2 of them were killed, and he was nearly killed down the mine. Said, all right, well, we now form a union. You know, the passionate belief of these people, you take a union ticket or you take a hiding. Ross Fitzgerald, the great Australian historian, he said, it was a free country. You could take a ticket or you could take a hiding.
Yeah.
There's a very funny story of Ted There's a big, early, brutal-looking bloke, and he had no partner in crime. McCormack, it was also big, brutal. Anyway, Ted gets in the bar, and Johnny is a bloke drinking at the bar, and he said, hey, Johnny, you haven't taken our ticket. So he pulls out his union book, starts writing Johnny a ticket. And Johnny tells Ted what he can do with his ticket book, which this is public broadcasting, so I can't tell you what.
Sure.
Johnny told Ted to do with his ticket book.
Sure.
His union tip. So McCormack said, did you say that to Ted? He said, I'll say it to you too. So he grabs him by the hair, drags him back, and goes bash, bash, and then starts kicking him around the bar and floor, picks him up by the belt, and then says, now take out a ticket. And Ted, without size, had to look sideways and all this. He said, hey, Tommy, it would have been real good if you just taken it. Johnny, it would have been real good if you just took out the ticket without all this trouble, you know. He said, oh, yeah, but you didn't go to the trouble of explaining that to me properly.
Yeah.
And, but the story is actually true.
Yeah.
It did actually happen. But it wasn't easy, and people had to go to jail because they were bad and intimidating people and all of that sort of thing. Well, that's pretty good if you're not on a building site. Now, you're been a person that's been on a building site and high rises. And then it becomes different, you know.
Yeah.
There's bad things happening in the tunnel in Brisbane. My union, everyone's Paul that I'm a member of the CFMU, but not only a member, but a very flame-waving member. Yeah, all right, well, you can be critical of us, but there's 11 deaths a year on high-rise building sites.
Yeah.
Right, well, I've been doing all the talking here. I just want to make 2 other observations, which are probably a bit long-winded.
This has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed our chat, and it's been again a lot of listening. But I'm an old soul. I love listening to some of these stories and some of the wisdom from the past. But guys, if you're listening to this right now, we actually were talking on camera before this as well. I'm going to chuck that at the end so that you guys can enjoy that conversation. I've had a lot of you guys reach out to me trying to get Turning Point Australia merch. You can click the description, link in the description. You can grab a Make Australia Great Again hat. And also, I strongly recommend you listening to this podcast from Sam Bamford on the Two Worlds Collide podcast, where Bob actually goes through a lot more of these issues, talking about infrastructure, water, defence, the Bradfield scheme. He goes through everything with Sam, and I didn't want to cover the same territory. And what was that? Population as well, and also income splitting. And I really enjoyed listening to that. And you kind of need to listen to that before you come to this one. But God bless you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate Bob taking the time to be here. And I'll see you guys later. Ciao.
Jesus' blessings be upon you all.